Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid, but we've got lots to discuss with you. Without further ado, let's go to the topics that we will talk about. We'll begin with the rains that of course are unprecedented, that have caused havoc across Pakistan. We've seen the situation in Balochistan. We've also seen how the government is making efforts in order to bring some kind of relief to the people. Of course, the army is also doing its utmost and so are the other forces that are also helping the people in distress. The Prime Minister also went to Tank today and was talking to all the people to understand their grievances as well under the unprecedented circumstances. This is going to be our first segment. Then we will be talking about Iran nuclear talks that are apparently set to resume in Vienna. This is of course one of the latest attempts as far as Iran and the P5+1 are concerned to revive these stalled nuclear talks or the JCPOA in some form or the other. Will this time these talks be a success or not? That is a huge question mark, and this is our second story. Then we'll be talking about China, that has appreciated Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif as far as China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is concerned, and how he has been making efforts to push this mega corridor between Pakistan and China. Of course, it is one of the major economic cooperation incentives between the two countries. Also, advancing political cooperation collaboration between Pakistan and China has been the priority of this current government, and this has been applauded by the Chinese as well. And finally, we'll be talking about the Police Martyrs Day that is being observed across the country today. Sacrifices, of course, we've seen that have been rendered by the police personnel, not now, not in the last year, but since always. We've seen how they've always been on the forefront when it comes to helping and defending us, the people, the citizens of Pakistan are concerned. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first story, and that concerns the unprecedented rains in Pakistan and of course the government efforts to help the people who are in distress. More in the following report.
Pakistan is grappling with challenging monsoon season as torrential rains caused massive flash floods in Balochistan, Sindh and southwest Punjab, inflicting huge loss of human lives and properties. The Pakistan Met Department stated that the country saw the wettest July this year with 181% above average rainfall, breaking the record of 62 years. July's monthly rainfall exceeded the total normal monsoon seasonal rainfall by 26%. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif emphasized that the collective efforts by federal and provincial governments and departments are necessary to ensure the early rehabilitation of people affected by flash floods and torrential rains. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, during his visit to flood-affected region of Tank, lauded the efforts of the National Disaster Management Authority and provincial disaster management authorities for striving to rescue and relieve the affected population. The federal government has increased the cash assistance for injured people from 25,000 rupees to 250,000 rupees and has also announced a similar compensation of 0.5 million rupees for both mud and concrete houses damaged completely and rupees 2 million for partially damaged residences. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also formed a special committee to assess damages caused by the recent rains in the country. Climate change is a huge challenge which requires resolve of entire nation to combat its impact.
Now we've been joined by Tofiq. Pasha Saab, he's a social and environmental activist. Tofiq Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Tofiq Saab, when you look at the current state of affairs, as you know, as far as these rains are concerned, whether it be Balochistan, whether it be other areas of Pakistan, Baltistan has been affected, Azad Jammu and Kashmir has been affected, so have Sindh, so have other provinces, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well, Punjab as well. What needs to be the most important measure that needs to be taken in this day and age as far as preventing further disaster in Pakistan is concerned?
Well, we need to get prepared for it, and it's if you look at it, it's not only Pakistan. Regionally, we've seen rains in the Middle East as well. There's been massive rainfall all over, and this is one of the effects of climate change, as extreme weather events. So it could be very heavy rain. And it could also be because there is a variability in it as well. So it could suddenly not rain either. Um, so both are very serious events. Um, when we know that there is going to be rain, we are fortunate that there is a time frame for it. It's not any time of the year. Of course, the rains are getting starting much earlier. Winters are getting smaller. Summers are getting longer. Rains are coming earlier. The monsoon is extending into Pakistan, which never used to. So, I mean, if you know it's going to rain and there is possibility there's going to be massive rainfalls, there is so much that one does to be prepared. And so there are various things. There are short-term and there are long-term things. We should not be having 100 and some bridges getting washed away. So all our infrastructure has to be climate resilient. We have to expect and anticipate extreme weather events where our bridges and our infrastructure, our roads are going to be pushed to the limit, and they should be able to sustain. For the people living there, we must ensure that people are living safely away from water, away from the way of the water. And we must ensure that all these flash floods that come, the path that the water takes, and these are historical paths. The water runs on them year after year after year. We have to ensure that there is no kind of blockages on them. There is free flowing space available for the water.
That is so important, Tofiq sir. But let me come to your first point. You talk about relocating people from areas that are really prone to monsoon rains or floods, or the meltdown and the effects of glaciers as well.
Not exactly relocating, because this is, of course, it will come to a stage, and very long ago when we started talking about climate change and the effects of this, we talked about maybe 200 million climate refugees, climate displaced persons, if you would rather use that word. So, and it's already been happening in our mountainous regions. We already have people who have migrated due to climatic changes, and it's happening in the deserts also, where the water has been getting shorter and shorter. We've been lucky that Thar Desert has got a lot of rain, but then that is certain parts of the Thar Desert. How about the Cholistan Desert? So there will be climate displaced people. Also, I think...
But you talk of climate displaced people, Tofiq sir, I'd like to understand whether people would be willing to displace themselves. I've asked that to other guests as well, and they have a myriad point of views as far as whether the people would or would not do that, because there are families who've been living in their respective places since generations. They don't want to move, despite the fact that there are floods or rains or earthquakes.
You see, it's not just the fact that they've been living there for 200 years, but their livelihood is dependent on there. It's their lands, it's their asset, it's what they hold on to.
I agree with you.
So, but we have to think about it, and I think for a country like ours, with this huge population, extreme poverty, financial strains that our country has been going through, we can't really afford huge losses. But our investments are also going to be high, but we have to make those investments because our losses will be much higher. So we have to find a way through where you can, or at least secure those people over there. So, what we have seen, and now with the mobile phones availability so widespread, some of the videos we've seen are heartbreaking, and it should not be getting to that. And there is things that we can do, we have to do. This is people that belong to this country, to this land. All of us put together make the country, and they are just as important as anybody else.
I totally agree with you as far as the importance of people, whether they're from the rural or the urban areas. The plans that you talk about, the measures that need to be taken, could they be done in the short term to prevent such happenings from taking place next year?
Well, to begin with, when the least you can do, look, when there is flood water coming into the rivers or even the storm water drains, whether if for Karachi it was the Mali River or the Liari River and all these areas, the seasides, when the tides are going to be very high, there are going to be storms, announcements are made. People are asked to move to higher ground. So, I mean, that could be the most basic, all right? That could be the most basic. And then...
And of course, temporary shelters being made for the people who are to be temporarily displaced so that they can have all the food or all the requisite things that they need.
It has to be assisted. And you have to also I sometimes feel very, very sorry. When we were growing up, there used to be something known as the civil defense. So between them and the governments, other agencies, we should be able to be there pronto. As it rains, we should be waiting, ready to help people, because we know it's going to happen. And the state has machinery that it can, under most circumstances, it can help in. So there are two aspects of it. There is rescue and then there is relief. So we add another, so there is the preemptive, and then when there is an incident and there are people stuck, there has to be rescue and then relief work. And it should not require 3 days or 5 days for the government or the state machinery. Let's put it as the state machinery, because governments come, governments go. But the state remains and the state machinery remains. So that should be...
Yes, you were saying? All right, the communication is a bit interrupted as far as our conversation with Mr. Tofiq is concerned. Nevertheless, we are trying to connect with him again. And what we are discussing is, of course, the effects of these rains, these floods across Pakistan, especially in Balochistan and other affected areas, and what needs to be done in the short term and the long term. Tofiq Pasha Sahab joins us again. Tofiq Sahab, we've seen unprecedented rains. We've seen that as well. Sometimes we know that this is going to happen. Sometimes we don't. Do you feel that the measures that you have also talked about civil machinery being always on the alert, should now be there more or less at all times so as to prevent any unprecedented incident to go haywire?
See, rains, like I said earlier on, we are lucky that rains are expected at certain times of the year. It doesn't just randomly happen. It's a seasonal thing. But extreme winters.
Yes, of course, this happens, Tofiq Sahab, in different seasons as well and winter as well, yes.
So, I mean, a few years ago, we had extreme summer, extreme heat, and a lot of people died.
Yes.
So, but we knew it was coming. We knew there was going to be a heat wave, right? And the temperatures were going to...
Of course, the temperatures, Tofiq, yes.
50 degrees. So people can't exist under those 50 degrees. So we have to ensure that they are secured. We cannot have everybody move and go to somewhere, because there isn't anywhere which has got the perfect climate anymore. So
Agreed.
We have to ensure that the people where they are as secure as possible. And if it is not at all possible, it's only then that that they should be thinking about moving. If we cannot have this migration of people. First, it used to be for livelihood, and we've always said, I mean, I've always said that provide them livelihood, the opportunity to earn their money where they are, so that everybody is not coming into the big cities. Pakistan is a huge country. There's a lot of land, and it's all very productive and very profitable. So, and first it was because of that, and now we are anticipating due to climate, there'll be people who will be displaced. So look at the pressure that's going to be coming onto the cities. So we don't want everybody to be migrating and leaving their spaces. They don't want to be doing it. So we have to be able to assist them. I don't like using the word help. I mean, we should be assisting them on being able to earn their livelihood and to live safely, climate-wise, and in every other way with dignity wherever they are.
You talked of civil machinery, Tofiq Saab. We've seen some measures that were taken by the current government due to, how should I say, ineffective manner of handling the situation in Balochistan and in some other areas. So I'd like to refer to Qila Saifullah, for example, as well. Do you feel such measures are important also to remind the those who are in the bureaucracy or those who are working at places that are important for people in dire straits when such incidents happen, that they need to show a more responsible attitude?
First of all, we should not be napping. We should not be asleep when these things are happening. We should be aware of them. And when they happen, like I said, pronto, we should be out there taking measures. And if we have not, there has to be some accountability, because people die. Even if people had not died, we've had a huge loss of life. Okay, it might
property,
be just
crops, and so on and so forth.
So, but that's what I was coming to. So even if people had not died, look at the infrastructure loss. Look at the loss to livestock, to agriculture. So if the way we are, we cannot afford those losses, because A, we've lost money that we invested in building a road, in planting a crop, and then we have to build that road again. We need that much more money again, and maybe more money, because some time has passed by, things have become more expensive. And crop you cannot replace mostly because the season is gone.
All right, Tofiq Saab, this brings me to a question. I don't know whether it is applicable or not. Do you feel some kind of insurance policy should be given to people who are in these areas, so that in case they lose their crops or their livelihoods or their houses or their cattle, that this could be reimbursed one way or the other?
Well, the world over there is insurance, and you can now today insure everything except an act of God. And I think in Pakistan, they've been trying to introduce crop insurance. Some of the banks have been doing it. Yes, I think that is one definite way. It needs a lot of a different type of an infrastructure, but yeah, of course, that could be
but
one.
An incentive by the public and the private sector is the need of the day in order to bring forth such measures so as to, prevent the damage. I mean, there's also the financial, effect of such events that happens to people.
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. Every time something like this happens, the government announces cash compensation. So people are being compensated for injuries, death, kacha ghar, pakka ghar, they've been given,
cattle, etc.
Right? So if there was insurance, if people could have insured themselves like they do anywhere else in the world, the insurance would have covered these things, and the state would not have had to give it. Right?
So it should be an appropriate mechanism, I feel, for future.
Of course it should be. And I think even commercial insurance companies should look into it. We have life insurance, don't we, in our country? And you can insure your house and your car, and you insure it for fire and theft and flood and everything else. So why cannot it extend to these things as well? And why cannot it extend to every living person in our country? So of course, to be insured, you need to pay a premium. You need to pay some amount of money to get insured for an X amount of money. So when there is such poverty where people can't even really afford food, where are they going to make their insurance premium? So a mechanism has to be. But I think also, whilst we are doing all this, we have to work at trying to improve the standard of living of all citizens of Pakistan, especially those who live below the poverty line. We have to. If until and unless we don't do that, we will not have really prospered.
I think that is very important. We need to take the necessary measures right now so as to avoid such damages that are happening right now, as we see in Balochistan and other parts of Pakistan. And we need to be future proof, future ready for any such circumstances. Climate change is a reality, Tofiq Sahab. You know that, I know that, everybody else knows that. But I think the public and the private sector need to collaborate in order to bring forth a mechanism so as to not only prevent damage in the future, but also help the people whose crops, whose livelihoods are damaged in the present and in the future as well. Thank you so very much, Tofiq Pasha Saab, social and environmental activist, who have joined us, to have talked to us about the effect of the rains of the monsoons in Pakistan, what needs to be done, what measures needs to be done in the short term, in the long term, by the government and by the different other agencies as well. Let's come to our last stories. The first concerns the Iran nuclear talks. Now, talks have been going on to revive the JCPOA, but to no end. We've had different rounds of talks in different areas, indirectly between the US and Iran, because of course there are no direct talks, there have been intermediaries, and the last round of talks did not prove to be a successful one. Now, representatives from Iran and the US have returned to Vienna for a new round of discussions that has been mediated by the European Union. The European Union has been quite insistent in kind of reinvigorating this JCPOA that has been stalled since 2018, when the US removed itself, ejected itself under the Trump administration on this Iran nuclear talks. Now, let's hope, let's wish that some kind of a positive outcome comes this time. We've always been hoping since so long that some concrete positive results come out of it, and this time we continue to hope. Our next story concerns China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and of course the talks between Pakistan and China, and the appreciation of China as far as the current government and the measures it has taken to reinvigorate China-Pakistan Economic Corridor are concerned. China has appreciated Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif for pushing ahead the CPEC and of course his untiring efforts for advancing practical cooperation between the two countries. This is what has been said by the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying. I quote unquote, "We highly appreciate the Prime Minister's statements. He has done so much for practical cooperation between the two countries." Here's looking forward to much more robust cooperation. And finally, today is the Police Martyrs Day, ladies and gentlemen. This is being observed across the country. The police, as you know, has a very important role in defending us on the civilian level, on the rural levels as well, on different levels. And many of our police jawans have laid down their lives in order to defend us from different elements that have been trying to create havoc. We have numerous examples of people who have laid down their lives, numerous shuhada, numerous martyrs, and we continue to pay them homage. And today, on this Police Martyrs Day, we continue to also appreciate the efforts of the police in order to defend us and in order to defend our motherland, that is Pakistan. Of course, this Martyrs Day has been celebrated all across Pakistan, whether it be in Punjab or other provinces of the country, and we inshallah will always remember those who have helped us be safe from different elements. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new segment stories that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe, follow the SOPs, get yourselves vaccinated. Allah Hafiz.